You've probably heard know your ideal client 1,000 times. Without a blueprint to attract the right people, you're not building a business, you're building a trap. Here's the truth. If you skip this step, you're not just guessing, you're wasting time, money, and energy chasing people who were never meant to work with you.
This episode isn't about branding fluff. It's about building a business that actually works for you. So if you're tired of misaligned clients and being burned out, this one's for you. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Lisa. So, how did we get to this point? Stephanie and I have both been in private practice now for a lot of years. When we started out, we were those people attracting misaligned clients, opening up our caseload to whomever would come in, and working with the wide spectrum of demographics, of issues, and whatever came through the door, we would work with. And along the way, it was exhausting. My schedule was out of control. It ruled me. I had clients from every walk of life, every age, in the whole range. And I was trying to figure that out. It took up so much time and energy. And it was way too much for what I wanted in my life.
Agreed. And I feel like there's a few things that almost encourages that. So between the culture of mental health as a whole, we're here to help. We're here to serve. So we kind of hold the space for people. And so with mental health in itself, I feel like our wantingness to serve tends to hold the space for multiple people. And we were never really guided with the blueprint or how to be specific or lean into our areas of specialization or ideal clients where we're able to find that alignment for both sides.
Absolutely. With that is that we are taught the theoretical, whether it's from the history, the theoretical of where this field started. And for social work, that was very strong roots of helping,
Uh-huh.
seeing the issues out there in social justice and mental health, and that we were the helpers. And then in school that we're taught the basic foundational modalities.
Uh-huh.
Between those things, we're never given the bridge to how that works to make it work for my life. And so we get this message that my life is basically at the mercy of everyone else's need. And
Uh-huh.
that if you don't do that, somehow you're not a good therapist because we're helpers. But when we try to be all things to all people, really ultimately we're just burning ourselves out. We're like crispy on all the edges. So
Yeah.
it is not a fun time. And when you get to that point, you're not good for anybody. You're not good for your clients, you're not good for your family, you're not good for friends, you're not good for yourself for sure.
Right.
The issue being you take these misaligned clients, and I know that we've all been there, that
Uh-huh.
we've opened up our caseload. We have this gut sense of like, I don't know if this is going to be a great fit
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
on this misaligned client. And with that, it just ends up taking so much more of our energy.
Right.
Administrative tasks become more. Doing treatment plans becomes more. Sitting in session to work on that therapeutic alliance is
Uh-huh.
so out of balance that it's exhausting. And at the end of the time, the reason why we've taken this client is so far off the mark of what is a healthy practice that it's jarring,
Right.
really honestly to our inner systems when we pay attention to ourselves.
Yeah. And it's a huge disservice at that point. So it ends up being the opposite of what we want and how we want to help others as well as ourselves. And having that go on for so long, it becomes a foundational block of your practice. So when you get to that point of being over it or being burnt out or giving too much time and energy for less and less money, you may recognize it, but then it's not a quick fix because it has been such a part of your foundation. Through our experiences, we were seeing multiple people. We were working long hours and weekends and not able to spend time with our family or do our healthy habits. So I got to a point where I wasn't able to practice what I was preaching and it just wasn't the best fit. So being able to highlight some objective measurements for ourselves, some certain things that we can really lean into and really put out there to help attract people that we can help within alignment and that are going to receive what we have to offer. I think that's a big part of it too. Within these blueprints or objectives that we have for ourselves, it allows them to find the right fit as well. So it's good for both sides, for longevity within services, to build that therapeutic rapport, to really have the alignment in best practice as a provider, as well as what the client's receiving.
Absolutely. We take these misaligned clients, and even if our motivation is genuine at the
Mhm.
beginning, we take them on. And I've done this when I was in a group practice and I was convinced because no one else could see this person, or I was best fit, or whatever the scheduler thought. And I took on somebody even though I knew I shouldn't. And just the amount of extra that it took me, it does a disservice to the client because they ultimately will feel it. They will feel
Mhm.
it, kind of just that churn, that grind in the therapeutic alliance. And then along the way, how things go, like whether it's with administrative tasking or the client scheduling,
Mhm.
something starts falling apart, and which ultimately impacts the retention of your caseload. And then you're back at square one trying to get the clients. So
Right.
if you take the time, even if you're at that point when you need more on your caseload, if you are still building your caseload, taking the time, taking a step back and really examining is so invaluable. It helps you feel much
Mhm.
more alive, that you're gaining from being in your clinical practice
Right.
versus exhausted. That is a huge difference to everybody involved.
Exactly. And when you gain, you can give more. So,
Mhm.
again, as our service of helping others, any help is helpful. But for me to be able to show up as a healthy version of myself, I have so much more to give. My brain's working well. I have all these awesome ideas. I can share some of that energy and some of that healing. So, again, can't highlight it enough. It's really important for both sides, both for yourself as a provider as well as for your potential clients that you'd see. So, what for you do you feel like you were really struggling with that you noticed and started to shift?
I think that the first indicator was that I was stretching my work days, my schedule, because of somebody else's request.
Ah,
Oh, I can't make it at 4. Could you see me on Saturday morning? Couldn't you see me at like 6 o'clock at night? And I had a schedule set, and yet I would be like, yeah, what else am I doing? I work for myself. Like, I can just go ahead and do that. But it takes a lot.
it does. It really
So
does.
that started building these edges of that I was resenting, or that I was taking away from my family. That was, I think, my starting point. What about
Yeah.
you?
It was similar. So, kind of the same thing as far as the hours and scheduling and kind of being open to things. And what I was saying to myself too often was this or that. Well, with my schedule, I can grocery shop or I can do laundry. It was basic needs. So once in a while is one thing, but for it to become a pattern, it was exhausting. I know it's kind of redundant to say, but to the soul, it was something that I didn't feel like my life was mine. And I love what I do. And it was starting to be less exciting or less, not even fulfilling, but recharging with it because of the sacrifices going with it. And another thing I noticed is that when I started to shift to more structured scheduling, they follow suit. So the clients will make it work if it's important to them. And you'll still get the occasional, it's a rough week. Like, could you swing this evening one? Or could you swing a little bit different in the morning than we're used to? Absolutely. But that's a lot different than having your weeks be not yours over and over and over again.
Boundaries, which is a overused buzzword, but boundaries set groundwork, foundational expectations and how we treat each other. And with doing that, you can treat each other really well.
Yes.
Your client showing up prepared for their session on time is also then you showing up in your full version, ready, prepared as a clinician to
Uh,
give them your wholehearted therapeutic self in
right.
this space. It's the taking the step back before you get burnt out,
Uh-huh.
before you just keep doing this churn of all this something. But even if you're there, it's like, need to hit pause, even if it's for a weekend, take a pause and to step back and to really start looking at the details. And it's of creating your own blueprint so that you know the paradigm you're working out of. You know what space you are in control of. You're the expert in
Mm-hmm.
this space. And I
Yeah.
think when you have a better perspective on those things is when you are a magnet that
Yes.
will become the language you speak out of. You'll project that energy. You have this different confidence. You bring that to the table. And each of us is a unique therapist. And yes, we have foundational things we've each been taught, like our theories and our modalities and those kind of things. But how we integrate them, how we put them together, what we do with a client definitely looks different. But we have
Mhm.
to have that alignment and energy internally in order to start there.
Absolutely. And it's modeling. So, again, going back to that practice what we preach kind of thing, when we come to the table with our practices and our boundaries and clear communication and stuff like that, we're showing them it's also okay for them to do that in their lives, have these boundaries and have some self worth with it. So, there's so many things that kind of come from it. But on the business side of things, there's only one you and you know you the best. So show up as yourself. And it takes that internal questioning and exploration to figure out what that looks like. So when we
Mhm.
talk about boundaries, the boundary is not going to be the same for everyone. It doesn't just look, nope, I'm not doing this because this is my boundary. It's like, okay, so my areas of specialization are trauma, behavior modification, and holistic approaches to health. So if I'm shopping for shorts, I'm not going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to go look for shorts. So if people are looking for help in my areas of specialization, they know they're coming to the right place. We talked about the schedule a lot. The schedule, I can be flexible on certain days, but weekends are mine, unless of an emergency kind of thing. And even between you and I, my work time frame tends to shift with clients. I usually have morning admin and then late morning to evening clients, and yours looks totally different. So
Mhm.
the more you cater it to yourself, the more it's going to work because it is not a one size fits all for all providers.
So besides scheduling, what else was your process in figuring out what your blueprint was?
I think between scheduling and fee, so kind of coinciding with that, as well as exploring the ideal client. So I can focus on my areas of specialization, but what type of clients would really benefit from this?
Mhm.
And there are just certain, I don't necessarily want to say buzzwords, but holistic approach. That's a perfect example. That is my approach. So I think time and place for medication, but that's not the first answer. We look more lifestyle, we look at brain language. So if that's something that a client is not looking to understand, then
Sure.
that kind of is that misalignment. The more I spoke my truth about what I have to offer, the more you could see if it was a match when people would come to a consultation or even just initial intake kind of thing,
Mhm.
and someone who's ready. It needs to have someone who's willing to put in the work with me because my goal is you don't need me. So we want to find ways to have that integration in your life. And just like we talk about the blueprint and catering it to ourselves, cater it to your life. We want clients to be able to understand themselves and know what they need and be able to speak up about those things or find new outlets or activities that are going to be helpful to improve their health and wellness. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes it feels like we're dismissing or not helping people when it's not a good match. So that gets hard. But then again, short store, right? If you're looking for shorts and there's not shorts in here, it's just not the good fit.
Mhm.
What about for you?
Well, and you hit on some really good things in there because one is of your goals, what your goal is in terms of how you want to set up a practice, of what kind of things you want to pay attention to, both professionally and personally. And alongside, like kind of figuring out what those goals were, short term, medium, and even long term for myself, is then looking at like, well, how do I form this? That was also around who do I want to work with? And you had mentioned your area of demographics you really work with of specialization, and mine is somewhat similar but different. Is that mine is trauma, but it's military and military families and expats. Those are
Mhm.
my areas of expertise. And I came down to what made the most sense for what I knew of these people who have dealt with these things, and I pursued those trainings. And
Yes.
mine is somatic modalities, and I that's what I work out of. And so it present that to any client that comes to me.
Mhm.
And I hold my clients very loosely that they are not mine. Really
Mhm.
ultimately is it's like what you had just said, such a golden nugget of I'm trying to work myself out of a job. That's what I tell my clients too. My ultimate goal is to them not need me, but wouldn't that be a great world to live in? Like I want to live in that world where there is not a job for me doing this. And so that said, is if you're not a good fit, I'm not going to try and convince you otherwise and try and sell you on whatever I'm selling, because ultimately that's not going to serve either of us well. And I'd rather align you with another therapist that has the schedule, has the specialty, who has the modality, who has, just kind of something that they work with differently than I do.
Exactly.
And if I can figure that out with you, that's a success on my end. And
Mhm.
I'd much rather a client go that way. And I think that when we can work out of that process, it's very much more of the abundance
Yes.
thinking, and I'm not kind of grasp onto and hold on to every single client
Mhm.
that come in my door
Yeah.
for a consult, an email, a call, whatever they may come in. So when you do that, I think that it's creating these different relationships, both
Right.
within yourself, with your client, also then in your therapist communities. So you're creating something different in just your own thought process.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point about the trainings. So that's a wonderful example that's not quite directly with clients, but you get to hone in on your skills. You get to build these very specific ones because you know what you want. You don't waste money on trainings that are not helpful, relevant. And then, so professionally, that helps. And then when you bring it into practice, now you are this wealth of knowledge of very specific, helpful things because you were able to ask yourself how you want to show up and what you want to focus on and what you can offer people. And you did. So instead of being jack of all trades, you have more knowledge and more depth in this very specific avenue. There's still variables, there's more than just trauma. So, like you said, we would love to work ourselves out of a job, but for now, we're on the front line and we're cool with it. But we
Mhm.
want to come with what we have and really be bulky in that space.
Well, when you even say we're on the front line, it with that is I want to do justice to the job that I'm doing, do it well. I
Hmm.
don't want to show up with this cynical, burned out, kind of laissez-faire, like nonchalance, whatever kind of eye roll. I want them to really get the best of
Uh-huh.
the care.
Yeah.
And, it goes back to why did we even get into this work? Why?
Yeah. That.
And if you hadn't stopped and like had took my time to figure that out, then it's hard to create goals. It's hard to figure out who you want to work with. That you end up of holding space, but you're really just holding the emotional bag, and you don't even really know what to do with all that either
Mhm.
energetically. So it's kind of going back to the beginning
Mhm.
and really taking that space to kind of hone out why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You have to have other motivations that are getting you there.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Sure.
why do you think all this is important? Why would you say like having a blueprint or the detail, like thinking about your details really matters?
Yeah. So the very obvious, as we've kind of talked about, is avoiding the burnout. Kind of goes without saying, just because maybe not a lot of us have experienced it or working towards that. But past that, now that we've had time, it's sustainability. It's the fact that if it's aligned to me and I change, I can adjust it. So I'm not trying to show up in this blanket statement of approach or modalities or anything like that. And I have to make it work. It's me that gets to shine through. And whether I pull a new training or this happens or this is going to be helpful, I'm able to cater and adapt because I am checking in with myself and I am seeing what's relevant or what my skills might be helpful towards or stuff like that. So, between continued alignment as well as the ability to adjust or change as I grow and as things grow, it's been really influential in a good way. You get excited about it. You get excited about what you can offer, what you can learn more about, or the fact that if it's out of my wheelhouse, it's so very apparent and it's no ego. It's like, no, but like you said, we can refer and it's not a me or nothing type of situation. It
Mhm.
gets to be, this is what I can help with. And if there's a need for more, then we refer. That way it still stays balanced and everyone's getting what they need. The clients have an understanding of what to expect as well as what the options are if there is a need for more.
Yeah.
What about for
I
you?
think that when you don't take the time to really work through creating your own blueprint, that you're running around focused on all these external things, whether it's what your office looks like, what you're using for online systems, what all those external things may be. You're even looking at, like, well, what's the latest and greatest of trainings? And should I be doing that one? Oh, there's like, seems like there's a lot of these clients that are this kind of client available. I'll just go do that thing. And you're kind of trying to latch onto all these external things. And when you take a minute and you pause and you take the time to examine on the inside, the internal stuff, and then work on your own self-awareness of your own strengths, your own interests, your own story, and building from that point, then you're making decisions for your external that align so much more with who you are. And that balance between the external internal, then clients feel that when there's like that there's not dissonance within yourself that you're radiating. So you're bringing that kind of confidence. You're bringing that knowledge so that you have so much more to offer when you do that. So you have that decision clarity, like you were talking around of, should I be doing this training, this conference, this something? Nope, it's not for me. Nope, it doesn't align with these goals. Nope, it doesn't really go with these like demographic I'm working with. Or that, hey, I'm really needing something for this gap. I'm really needing something to meet this need. And you can then search that out.
Yeah.
And I think in that you're talking around adapting is that's also part of our growth. And we should be expecting ourselves to grow.
Mhm.
Have to know where you're starting from and who you are in order to even grow those parts of yourself.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully by doing so, you get rid of that chasing the carrot feeling.
Yeah. The
You know,
exhaustion, which is more sustainable.
snacks. Like what the
Yeah.
heck?
We
So
always need the snacks. Yes.
yes, yes. And we could talk about this and break it down for 800 years, but truly just wanting to reinforce that it's important, it's necessary, and it's helpful to everybody involved. Taking
Mhm.
this step back, figuring out your blueprint or some things that are going to be really measurable and a frame of reference for yourself in order to show up as your best self and keep this going in the way that it's meant to be. It's meant to be fulfilling. It's meant to be helpful. Yes, it's
Mhm.
going to be tiring. Mental health is not easy, but we know we chose it. We chose to get in it. So the way that you and I have really kept ourselves excited about it and willing to learn and willing to grow and showing up for our people is by doing this stuff. We were able to reflect and learn. And it took time. Like you said, it wasn't 1 minute. We didn't just I dream genie it into place, but we figured out what we needed and then we practiced integrating it into our lives.
Yeah. And it's of creating a plan that isn't just, here's my work plan and somehow it's supposed to just overlay onto the rest of your life and it just like magically works. It's literally taking a look at
Yes.
all of it together and then seeing how it integrates so that you have this very like a seamless, but kind of stitched together, that these work together so that you flow from one to the other and you get to bring that energy from one to the other rather than it just being all one-sided or feeling way too drained on usually the work side, honestly. But that integration is so important.
It's true. It's about alignment, it's about sustainability, and it's really about calling in the business that actually feels good to run.